Welcome to the BioStock studio from Medicon Village in Lund. Today I am joined by Sven Rohmann, CEO of Immunicum, as well as the current CEO of DCprime, Erik Manting. And today we're going to learn more about the newly announced merger between the two companies and what that means for Immunicum's development plans going forward. I'd like to say welcome to you both. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you.
Sven, I'd like to begin to ask you, you became a part of the Immunicum team during the summer, and you have a strong reputation as a deal maker from your past experience within life science and big pharma. How big a role did this experience play in putting together this merger with DCprime, would you say?
Thank you for the flowers. I highly appreciate that. But number one thing why I was working with Immunicum is with dendritic cells. And of course, in summer, we did a strategy review. And in that strategy review, it became very clear, even from the response from several pharma partners we have already, that we are on the right way on the journey, but we are not there yet. And as you, as a deal maker, always look is, how can I leapfrog? Meaning, how can I accelerate the processes to come closer to where I want to go? And then I saw that there is a long-lasting relationship between DCprime and Immunicum, mainly based on the fact that our CSO, so Chief Scientific Officer, Alex, has really paved the way for the science in dendritic cells. And I know that Erik and Alex had been communicating over many occasions about that. And then I saw what Erik and his team have built, and I digged deeper. And then it was quite logical as a deal maker. They said, hey, that fits so nicely. Yeah? And the synergy of that is great. And 1 + 1 is 5, yeah? Or even more. So this is really creating substantial value of it. Yeah? Of course, as a deal maker, I'm always aware that when I do things like that, I create dilution for my existing shareholders. But this here has so much potential of creating more value for them that nobody could resist. We had to do the deal. And then, of course, it is quite helpful if you have the experience how to execute deals, and if you have people like Erik, who from his side of deal making understand it. So we had a very good understanding to make that happen. And I think we closed it in record time. So knock on wood. And I would say thank you to our teams that made that happen, because without those advisors working day and night, this would not be then possible to close that deal already this year.
Yeah, deal closed in record time, you say. Would you be able to sort of take us behind the scenes a little bit in how this merger came to be? And for example, for how long ago was the discussions started on doing a concrete merger?
I think the idea that these companies would fit nicely is not a young one. Yeah? This has been up there in the air several times. But I think the key thing is, if it's up there and there, get it down, make it happen. And I think this is what happened. Yeah? So I saw the possibilities, I saw the opportunities, and thanks to my board, yeah, which I said, let's do it. Yeah? They did it. Yeah? And I think the same with Erik. When we met, we knew exactly this could be a really strong team. From the competences we can combine, from the approaches we can combine, from the portfolio we can combine, this is really good. And for me as a deal maker, I know the rules of the game. I know in cell therapy, you have to be a complete company. You cannot have a business partner and tell them, oh, here we have really great clinical data, but if you want to have something else but clinical data, please go to another company. That is not doable. That is what the big pharma doesn't accept. They want one-stop shop. They want everything in one box.
So there are clear synergy effects here. Erik Manting, could you tell us a bit more about DC Pharma and why your company is so compatible with Immunicum?
Sure, thanks. Yes, so as a brief personal introduction, I've been DCprime CEO since March 2018. And of course, joining forces and being supported by Van Herk as our main shareholder, we really got going from that moment in building out a strong company. The science was already very strong. Our founder, a lady called Ada Kruisbeek, she's a very renowned immunologist, so that basis was there. But like Sven said, you need to build it out into a company. And what that required was a combination of building out the team, but also taking critical strategic discussions about, for example, process development, about what you keep in-house as research, what you outsource as research or in an academic collaboration, everything that was built around clinical and regulatory. And we took care of that. So in the last 2.5 years, we've really grown out to a much more solid company with a lot of in-house capacities and capabilities. And that, I think, has created the momentum, which now makes us a perfect partner for Immunicum. And what we realized immediately was that not only the science was right, because that was the part that Sven alluded to. I had already been in touch with Alex Carlson-Parra about a couple of times, but that also the organizations were a perfect fit. And as a former banker, I've seen many companies trying to create mergers or creating mergers, but I've not very often come across such a perfect match where also the organizations were actually already nearly perfect to fit into each other. So I think that was the reason why when Sven and I sat together and we drew this out, we immediately realized we need to make this happen. And so I think the combination as a summary is on the one hand, a very strong joint scientific basis. On the other hand, a good basis of joint expertise on very important parts that I just described, such as the knowledge of the product, process development, clinical regulatory, everything that needs to be there. Plus now with these combined forces, we can really capture a combined in-house process development group, and hopefully in the longer term future, also an in-house manufacturing facility, which we are currently working on and on how we should get organized for that. But in the end, that's all behind what we've also stated in the press release as our plan towards building a fully integrated company. And that in the end will make us a very stable and valuable long-term partner for also external parties.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, combining forces then, now we do know that Immunicum will keep its headquarters in Stockholm, and DCprime is based in Leiden in the Netherlands. There are always some challenges when combining companies and cultures. Sven, what would you think would be the main challenges of integrating DCprime's expertise and resources into Immunicum?
I think it would be naive if we think we are done with the deal just because, just in quote unquote, just because we have a signature under a share purchase agreement. Now starts the point, what is the post-merger integration? And this is, thanks to my experience, one of the things I've done several times. And it needs that in the first step, all involved people, all the teams, get a comfort of working together. So after that, we will get into more details about business plan, how we use synergies, how we build things, what are the building blocks, how do we move it forward. And for me, that is important to tell our shareholders that I will not come out tomorrow and tell them this is a business plan, this is how we do it, because I have to give our team the comfort to find the best way forward. and to build the best for the company. And this will require some time. But we have the EGM in which our shareholders have to say yes to the deal on December 18. And I think until then, we will be in a position that we are only talking one team, the Immunicum team, that will consist of Immunicum and DCprime people. We need everybody there because we are really building for the big. And this is so important that people do it. Sometimes in this financial world, it's forgotten that people build companies, not money. And we are really out there for the value. And I can tell you, Erik is speaking value. He's running value. I highly appreciate that. So we are in a position to make something really good happen. Sometimes there is the understanding that this will take forever. No, it will be a journey of creating a lot of value. And I would say, look what is happening. There can, with a completely integrated company, there can happen things every day. Yeah? So once somebody says, this is exactly what I was looking for. And with that, what we are doing, we are creating awareness that this company is now in existence. Immediately, somebody can say, this is interesting for me. I want to work with those guys. And so we give them the possibility to work with us because now we can address all their needs. So much more opportunities and nothing like, we have to wait another year or 2 or 3 or 4 before something happens. No, it can happen, but it's not in our reach. We cannot predict it, but we can provide the prerequisites for it. So it can happen.
So Erik, you're not just combining the companies, you're also combining your clinical assets. And could you give us a brief explanation in exactly what way do your respective assets or clinical drug candidates complement each other?
Sure. So I think you can look at cancer in, let's say, 2 different ways. One is a lot of cancer treatments are now effective towards both solid tumors and blood tumors. But for actually all cancer patients, the biggest risk and their biggest fear is that the cancer comes back. And one way of approaching this is trying to find solutions for those tumors, those established tumors. That is what Immunicum is doing by introducing ilixadencel into that tumor environment, which they call an intratumoral primer. We call an intratumoral primer. And what we are trying to do from the DCprime side is actually prevent the tumor from coming back. So what we do is after that first treatment, when patients are in a relatively good health, but still are in a big risk of their tumor coming back, we provide for a vaccination with the aim to hopefully completely get rid of the tumor coming back, but at least delay it and stabilize these patients. And the fact that we do this with a vaccine makes it, I think, a very suitable product for what is called the maintenance window, right? The window after patients have undergone that first treatment. We administer our vaccine as an injection into the skin. And so it's a relatively gentle procedure if you compare it to other available cancer treatments. But to prevent the tumor from coming back, of course, also has a big medical benefit and is addressing a high unmet medical need. Combined, I think we have a very complete picture of being able to approach both blood tumors and solid tumors, and that will make also a much broader reach for different types of tumors.
Very interesting. And when you say both blood cancers and solid tumors, is there any limitation to the width of the number of indications, cancer indications that you will be able to target?
Well, there are many different reasons why cancers are sensitive for immunotherapies or not. So, of course, every time we make a decision, it will be a balance of many medical scientific aspects that we take into consideration. So from our end, I can say that acute myeloid leukemia, or AML, which is our lead indication, is a cancer that almost always comes back, particularly when patients have residual disease, which you can measure nowadays. So, and it comes back very quickly. So there's a big medical need, but also you can see the clinical effect relatively quickly. And the same thing holds up for ovarian cancer, where also initial treatment with surgery and chemotherapy is often successful, but the tumor comes back in the majority of women in the first year and certainly after the second year after treatment. So also there we can relatively quickly see if we have a clinical effect. So that has so far determined, of course, on the basis of medical scientific data that we have collected also ourselves, our choices. And from the Immunicum side, I can't really speak now because I haven't dived in all the details. Maybe Sven, you can say a few things about that.
Yeah, well, the deal maker has to jump in here because I see it, of course, we give those immune therapeutics in combination. They are not monotherapeutic. So for me, it means, for example, Elixir has been tested and you have seen the result and it's ongoing in combination with checkpoint inhibitors. We have seen those fantastic data from Alex on the Nivo-Ipi combination. So this is something fascinating. And what I see with DCprime, and quote unquote, please, this is a forward-looking statement, exclamation mark. I see there the potential to combine it with CAR-T, and with CAR-T is the second hottest thing after checkpoint inhibitors. And if you go into the market potentials of checkpoint inhibitors, you look at the market potential that is forecasted for CAR-T. Wow, if only 10% of them would be using our drugs in combination with theirs, we are one of the biggest biotech companies. So the potential of that is huge. Nobody can predict how the market will evolve, who will win or take over, and so on. For us, that is not important because we are completely agnostic to help. We help them all. And I think the minute this is realized by Big Pharma that we provide here a real solution to their portfolio, then we are talking again.
Yeah, certainly. So we have a scope of a truly gigantic potential then, if everything goes as you would hope. I was going to ask you about, I mean, it's Immunicum and it's DCprime, but there's also a third party, a third stakeholder that's heavily involved in this. Could you, Erik, perhaps tell us more about Van Herk and why they decided to play such a big part in this transaction?
Sure. What I can say about Van Herk is that it is a very strong and experienced investor in the European biotechnology space. The Van Herk Group, for those who don't know, is founded by Mr. Van Herk, a Rotterdam-based entrepreneur. And he has been very successful in real estate and since the late 90s of the previous century also in biotech. So he's been part of the type of adventures we are discussing today, which is you start with a company which is relatively small, but which can grow out to something very big and valuable. And he's proved that to be a very successful investment strategy as well. Now, I've been working with them very directly, of course, in the last 2.5 years since I became CEO. And yeah, they are very much involved and at the same time give management all the room to do what they need to do to create optimal value for all shareholders and building out the company. So it's, I think, a very good synergy between companies with an ambition level that want to create longer term value for all stakeholders and having a strong investor on board, which gives you the position. And of course, that's not only for Van Herk, it's also for AP4 and all other shareholders, but to have strong and supportive shareholders allow management to really create value and not be with their back against the wall and to do deals when they want to do them and not when they're forced to do them. And that, I think, is a great combination, a great starting point also for the combination.
Yeah. And DCprime obviously is a privately owned company, and Immunicum is listed in the stock market in Stockholm. How does this affect the transaction per se? And are there any plans for a later listing outside of Stockholm?
Question for me or for Sven?
For Sven, sorry.
I don't want to speculate about additional listings. I only, and I think this is why you are asking me that, the biggest biotech market is, of course, the American market. Cell therapy companies have been sold there for $2-digit billion US. And I think we are aware of that. Our shareholders are aware of that. So let's see what the near future brings. With regard to the transaction, it is obvious if you are acquiring a private company, you have to spend much more efforts on a due diligence than you would have to do if that would be a public company. So a lot of the time that went into that was not on lengthy negotiations, it is to make a thorough due diligence. And that was the most time-consuming part of that when we started the journey. And of course, there are accounting things like you have to get all the numbers of a private under IFRS and so on. And this way got help from PwC. We had our auditors being extremely interactive to make sure that we could keep the timeline. A big thank you to the auditors, which were Ernst & Young. So we really had to shuffle a lot of people around that deal to make it happen. And I can only say thank you. This was really a big and great team.
That's great to hear. Sven, finally here, what will be the next steps in this transaction, and when can your shareholders and the market expect more updates?
As I indicated before, we have to go through the EGM, where our existing shareholders have to agree to the deal. I'm not sure right now that we can announce publicly something before that, about that. We are checking that right now with our lawyers because we would like to give the maximum possible information to our shareholders. However, we have to keep the post-merger integration process in place as well and don't, in a way, top down things which we have to work for the better value of the company bottom up. I would expect as soon as possible, if not before the AGM, surely after.
Well, we and the market will surely look forward to more updates. I would like to say a big thank you to both of you for joining me today, for taking the time.
With pleasure.
It's our pleasure, always.
Thank you very much.